Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Sustainable Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Kate Mackey. I am a registered nurse coach, which is a health coach, but under my nursing license, and I am a certified personal trainer. If you have not listened to the show before, welcome. I am doing my damnedest to try and record more regularly, although that has been not in the cards lately. I really wanted to get this show out like twice a month, and it's really only coming out once a month. I looked the other day and I was like, oh my god, it's been over a month since I did part one of this. I had my notes typed up and I just never had a chance to record. Life has been crazy as always, so I usually try and record when like no one is in the house, so I'm not interrupted. You're less likely to hear background noise unless it's like the ceiling fan in the background or one of my dogs is underneath of my desk right now, possibly snoring. So sometimes it doesn't always work out that way depending on how schedules are. So here we are, a little, day late and a dollar short, but I am hitting part 2 today of Toxic as Fuck Beliefs in the Fitness Industry. Before I get into that, I think I mentioned on the last episode, at the time I was promoting a group coaching program called The Hive, which is nutrition and fitness for 6 weeks in like a small, nice little group. So we have 5 women in there right now, and it's been really good. Everyone's been coming to the coaching calls, been interacting on the Facebook page, so it is nice, like, that I'm not just talking at people. We get to do a little bit of coaching in the group calls, and it's been good. I think people have been enjoying it so far. I've been enjoying it so far. It's been nice. So that's been going on, and actually that is almost done. I have my last week 6 is Monday, and then I actually am going to do like a wrap-up call with them, kind of like give them like a little like bonus info and kind of where to go from that. And they also have lifetime access to that. So I will be doing that again probably next year. I'll be running the Hive again, and I'll be taking their feedback since they're technically, like the first group to go through it, and trying to make it better. And then they all have lifetime access, so they'll still be in the Facebook group. That group will still be invited to the coaching calls when I run it again, and my hope is to kind of like build an own little community there, hence the name The Hive. So that'll be coming up. Stay tuned for that. I am going to be opening up a couple, probably like 3 one-on-one coaching spots coming up probably end of August, beginning of September. So I'll be talking about that a lot more often. If you follow me on social media or you are on my email list, I'll be chatting about that stuff. So if you are looking for a more personalized approach with fitness and nutrition, then that is something that you want to check out. And I'll link all of that stuff in the show notes to sign up for my email list so you get info on that stuff. And again, if you're interested in the Hive and you didn't sign up this time, or it sounds like something that would interest you in the future, of course, you'll get some info on that as well. But for the main topic of us speaking today, if you are listening to the podcast or on the video of recording of this show on YouTube, we are talking about toxic beliefs again in the fitness and nutrition industry. And it's like such a catch, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for. A blessing and a curse, good and bad, I don't know. The very industry that I love and work in and have worked in for the last 11, 12 years is also drives me batshit crazy because there's a lot of mindset stuff that drives me nuts. And if you haven't listened to part 1, which is the last episode I released, I believe it was episode 8, then go ahead and listen to that. You don't necessarily have to listen to that one first before you listen to this one. That's a lot more on like some mindset stuff. This is more, I would say, like nuts and bolts, like nutrition and fitness stuff that we'll touch on today. And the main points I'm going to bring up are like quick intentional weight loss, special expensive supplements and protocols or detoxes. The thought that like you can only be healthy if you eat like fresh organic food. We'll get into that. Using exercise only as a means to burn calories, kind of like using that as a means to an end, and that's the only reason that you are exercising is to burn calories. And then this thought that weight training will make you bulky. It's usually this is perpetuated towards women. And then there's also kind of on the flip side that cardio will make you lose your gains. And I've seen that marketed towards women, but also towards probably men a little bit more. So we'll talk about that stuff too. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is quick intentional weight loss and crash dieting. And I want to kind of start this off by saying that this is directed more towards like general population. So there's a little bit of a difference. Like if your life and your health is in a serious spot and more rapid weight loss is recommended and will be monitored by your healthcare team, then that's a different subject. It includes a lot of nuance, and I'm not touching on that today. I'm talking strictly about like general population. That kind of stuff is not necessarily my area of expertise. There's a lot of nuance there. And again, so I was like, we'll not be touching on that. This is for, I would say, your average person that just wants to lose weight and like is signing up for whatever flavor of the week we're doing right now in the fitness and nutrition industry that it promises like a transformation overnight or like quick weight loss. I get that and again, another caveat to this again, because there's always nuance. I get that some people have events that they need to do this for at certain times, depending on like what they're involved in. There are weight classes for certain sports. In an ideal world, we would want to be in whatever weight class like we naturally kind of are weight-wise, but I know that sometimes that doesn't always happen. So there's that. There's also people who do figure competitions, and I understand that with that is like a competition in and of itself is to just get like as lean as you possibly can. We know that that is not sustainable in the long run, but if you are doing it for a competition, for an event, something like that, then that's a little bit of a different story. And I hope in that case you are working with someone in both of those cases that can coach you through that process and then also coach you back into like regular life to get you kind of out of it, because we know that you can't live in like people who do bodybuilding and figure competitions. Like you see them on stage when they're like ripped, they're starving, miserable, and probably dehydrated. So no one lives in like quote unquote show shape 24/7, 365. So hopefully that they have like a strategy to bring them back to like normal eating after like putting in all that work. And those aren't really clients that I work with. In the past I have in some capacity. Years ago I worked with a couple girls who were kind of like in the pageant circuit doing Miss Delaware at the time. One of them actually won. But I don't really do that anymore. I focus more on like long-term, like overall health and wellness, which you probably got from the previous episodes, or if you follow me on social media, you know that that is my jam. So those aren't the types of clients that I really work with anymore, even though I have dabbled in the past with that. So in general, I think before you sign up for like your next, quick fix diet is to really like, what is your intent behind this? Look at the way that you feel about this. And I feel like that can tell you a lot. It's not always easy, I will say, to kind of like call yourself out and like dig into like the mental and emotional side of it, but it will give you a lot of insight into the reason why you feel as though you need to do a intense crash diet anyway. So is it in your mind that you need to lose weight ASAP? Like, what are your goals? And keep in mind, as I kind of already talked about, that crash diets are really hard to stick to long term. Anytime, I know me personally, anytime I've done a diet in the past, when I was like into that a lot more when I was younger, you kind of hit this point where you're like, I can't wait to be done. Like, I can't wait to get off of this diet. And I feel like that is kind of a red flag if you're just doing it to lose weight and not necessarily doing it for like a figure competition or a pageant or, you know, powerlifting, jujitsu, etc., stuff like that, where like you need to be at a certain weight. So, like, if you go back to regular eating, and this again, when it was in my younger years, especially like I would like young, like middle school and high school, when I was like in that mindset, I like couldn't wait to go back to like eating like normal, like I was before I was dieting. And you know that like you'll gain the weight back and sometimes and then some, because you can't go back to what you were doing in the first place. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to go from like one extreme to the other, but we know that like you can't go all the way back to what you were doing in the first place, because it's not gonna work. For some reason, I thought that worked that way. The other issue is, so yeah, definitely like think about your intent behind it. Like, what's the rush? What is the rush for losing weight so quickly? Like, you probably have time to slow it down and take a more sustainable approach if you really think about it, and then you're less likely to like lose your sanity in the process. And the other thing that I feel like people don't really realize is that when you lose weight, especially if you're cutting calories pretty drastically, you're not losing just body fat, which is what I think most people, when they talk about losing weight, is what they are trying to achieve. You will also lose some muscle mass too, and this can happen even if you do a slower, like a lower calorie deficit, or less of a calorie deficit, I should say, not to get that confused. It can still happen, though it's less likely, and it can be staved off, especially if you're eating enough protein and if you're doing weight training. But if you're just like hitting the crash diet, calorie slashing diet type stuff super hard, you're not just going to lose body fat, you're going to lose muscle mass too, which is not usually what we're looking for. Definitely not from like an overall wellness and health perspective. But a lot of us would probably feel the same way, like aesthetically as well. So you definitely need to make sure that you're not doing too drastic of a calorie cut, you're weight training, and you're consuming enough protein. This is especially true as we age. So this is kind of the mechanism that makes yo-yo dieting so tricky, because you diet, you lose weight, usually it's a stricter diet, so you're losing body fat, but you're also losing some muscle. Then if you go off of it, which most of us do, you end up gaining weight back. However, the weight that you gain back is usually body fat, and it doesn't typically build back the amount of muscle that you lost. So now you're kind of at a disadvantage the next time you go to do another diet, because you either possibly may weigh more, and you probably have more body fat on your body in comparison to previously, where you may have had more muscle compared to your starting point, if that makes sense. So then we kind of start this cycle, and then you end up being worse off after several rounds of yo-yo dieting, because you end up having less muscle mass on your body. And plus, as women, and of course now I am in this age range at 35, around this age, we start to lose muscle mass if we don't keep up with it. And again, weight training and focusing on your protein intake can help a lot to prevent that from happening. And it's kind of hard to do that stuff if you're in a super strict caloric deficit. So definitely keep that in mind. Like, I know I joke and I'm like, weight training is the answer to everything, but like, again, this is one of those cases where it can make a big difference if you are weight training. You can still obviously be in a calorie deficit, just not a super drastic one, in order to kind of ride that line between losing weight, preferably body fat, and maintaining or building muscle and being active. And that stuff, it's so many health benefits. Obviously it's good for your brain too. Movement is good for your digestive system. It's good for your heart, your lungs, your blood vessels, and it's also really good for your bones and your connective tissues like your tendons and stuff too. It helps get them strong. So I joke, but I'm kind of like kidding but not kidding, that like weight training is such a good strategy. It's kind of like if there was a magic pill or silver bullet, I feel like that's the closest thing that you're going to get to that. The next thing is either like special or expensive supplements and protocols or detoxes. We know that detoxes and cleanses don't work. Usually it's just some sort of laxative or diuretic masqueraded to make you poop and pee a lot, and then that's it. Those are not necessarily good things. You don't necessarily need to poop a lot for your health to be good. And I don't know what that is in the wellness industry. I'm like, why is everyone like giving themselves diarrhea? Like, what is it right now as of end of July 2023? I keep seeing all this shit about people taking borax, and I'm like, that first of all, I'm gonna try and keep this rant to a minimum, but like, first of all, it can be toxic. You don't really need that much of it in order for it to make you super sick and or cause death. And it also gives you like a ton of diarrhea. So I'm like, this is not a good thing. Why are people in the wellness industry like dead set on giving themselves diarrhea? I don't know. And some of these detoxes and cleanses are no different. There are some supplements, mainly like herbs, vitamins, or stuff like that, where there might be some evidence that like milk thistle, for example, has been around forever. That is supposed to like help support your liver. Is it really necessary? Probably not. But it's sometimes that kind of stuff is marketed as a detox, or it supports the detoxification process, is kind of like what they say, because it tends to be good for your liver. That's one example. So I feel like companies are getting smarter at marketing, I should say, by saying like that sort of stuff now, because people like me they're probably tired of hearing us bitching about how you can't take a supplement and just detox your body because you have a liver and kidneys that do that for you. So right off the bat, we know that anything that's labeled like detox or cleanse, please look at that with a skeptical eye. As for anything else like special or expensive supplements, these are not things that you absolutely need. They're not going to work miracles. Some of them don't work at all. Some of them can actually be kind of dangerous, and the ones that do work, they're just kind of the icing on the health and fitness / wellness cake. Like, you're still going to get more benefit out of eating actual food. And then of course talking to your medical provider too if there is anything else that you should be taking. For example, vitamin D is a vitamin that a lot of people are deficient in, but you don't really know until you run lab work and get your levels done. It is the same with a multivitamin. Does everyone really need to take a multivitamin? I don't know. It depends on how you're feeling and a full workup with your healthcare provider. Same with probiotics, fish oil. These are all relatively safe ones that you can take and kind of try out and see if they work for you. But just know that even those, and really anything that you take over the counter, whether you get it from the internet, the drugstore, GNC, like, I don't care, just be mindful that those things can still interact with medical conditions and can still interact with medications. So you need to be careful. Like, fish oil and turmeric are super popular. They are generally safe. However, obviously if you have a fish allergy, you cannot take fish oil. And for both of those, you have to be a little bit careful if you're on certain blood thinners and stuff, because it can kind of mess with those and make them a little bit too effective. So just don't go taking stuff. Please check with your doctor, do some research first. Go to drugs.com, search like the interaction checker or do something like that to like inform yourself that it's all good before you just go taking stuff, even though it's considered relatively safe. Just an FYI. And basically anyone that tells you anything different, like you 100% absolutely need this supplement regardless or whatever it is probably trying to turn a profit or they're just not well educated on that topic, and they shouldn't really be giving that sort of advice anyway. So I would just, again, some supplements are fine. Some of them you do need medically. Like I said, like a lot of people need to take vitamin D. You can do lab work and figure that out with your doctor. But you just don't need to go taking a bunch of stuff. It might not make that much of a difference. I get a little wound up about like the mental health aspect of things. Like, there's some stuff where you take like different compounds and fish oil and stuff like that. And I'm like, did I notice a difference in my ADHD symptoms with those? No. However, Adderall, like a prescription medication, does make a world of difference for me. So like, I don't want that stuff to kind of delay you getting proper treatment from a healthcare provider. If somebody is like, oh, just take fish oil instead of, your ADHD meds, like it may help. It's not going to help probably as much as those if you need them. So don't stop taking your medication. The supplement industry is like the wild, wild west, and there are people out there selling them that don't have any business giving advice to people. So just, again, be mindful. Don't take anything or don't stop taking anything that is prescribed to you unless you talk to your doctor first. Please, please, please. If people ask, there are certain brands and certain supplements that I do recommend for people, and I use that term loosely. Usually it's like if people ask, or if they're like, hey, my doctor told me to take vitamin D, or my doctor told me to take fish oil, for example, what's like a good brand to look for? And I can, rattle off a couple brands. This is a subject for another episode, and kind of like tell them what to look for so they're making an informed decision. So that's kind of the way that I recommend them. There are certain brands that I like. One of them is Thorne, which I actually am considering partnering with. I've used them, I've trusted them so far, but I sure as shit will not be pressuring anyone to purchase them. So having said that, I feel like if someone is like giving you the option and empowering you to make a more informed choice, that's different, and that's sort of the way that I roll as far as supplements go, rather than just being like, take XYZ and it will fix all your problems. Like, that's not really how that works. So aside from it potentially causing medical issues, the other issue that I have is just the expense of it. Like, these things aren't cheap. It feels extremely privileged to me for people to promote expensive supplements and protocols that aren't financially accessible to a lot of people. I'm like, in this economy, like, egg prices have gone down, but like a few months ago, I had like a text message thread between me and one of my other clients about like the cheapest place to like find eggs. Like, worried about buying groceries, not whatever supplement is out there that's either not going to be super effective, or again is kind of like the icing on the cake if you have sort of like other things, other foundational pieces in place as far as like your health and wellness goes. If you're watching this video, I have done nothing, I apologize, I've done nothing but like rub my nose, and it's because allergy season is in full effect here, so I apologize. There's nothing wrong with me, I'm just itchy, kind of everywhere, but especially like my face right now, so, anyway, so yeah, I'll do a separate episode on this. It's been on my list of things to do, all about trying to vet your supplements and like which ones are actually worth your time and how to look for brands that are more reputable. I do have like a quick little like slide deck post on Instagram about this that I posted a while ago, so I will post the link to that in the show notes to kind of direct you in that way if that is something that you're interested in checking out. But I will definitely have a lot more info on that, because trust me, I can definitely talk about supplements for a while, the good, the bad, and the ugly of them. The third topic to bring up is that eating only fresh and organic food is what you have to do in order to be a healthy individual. And again, this I feel as though is kind of steeped in privilege and really good marketing. And this is actually something that for the longest time I believed to be true, and was something that I recommended to people. And in the last few years, I've really kind of like walked back my stance on that, because the more I read and the more I find out about it, I don't really think that this is necessarily true. I was shocked, like literally like jaw on the floor, shocked to find out that organic farming practices still use pesticides. I thought that I was doing like the most by buying organic food, thinking that it was pesticide free, and in fact it is not. Organic farmers use different types of pesticides than I would say conventional farmers do. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are any safer, and you're still going to find pesticides on your fruits and vegetables just like you would conventional farming. In both cases, the amounts that are found on our food is minimal, like way below what's considered to be the acceptable limits from the FDA for consuming pesticides. If you wash them off, like that's going to help remove a little bit of them too. But it's just not something, like buying organic stuff is just not something that I worry about anymore because of that. Same with like canned and frozen foods, they're just as good. I think it comes down to maybe like personal preference. Like I'm not always the biggest fan of certain canned vegetables. Like some I don't care, like canned beans are great, but I don't like canned peas and canned asparagus. I was actually having a conversation with someone about this the other day. Canned asparagus is like the most vile thing on the planet Earth, but fresh or frozen asparagus is fine. So sometimes even with that, like you might not think that you like certain things, but it might just be the way it's prepared or packaged. You might need to try that veggie a different way. But nutritionally speaking, like the differences between those things are pretty negligible. So just again, get what you can afford. I would rather someone eat like, I don't know, canned peas if they are cheaper and more accessible to them than, you know, foregoing them at all because they think that they need to only eat fresh peas. And definitely if they think that they need to eat organic peas. Like I feel as though sometimes these things, again, it's negligible nutrition wise, but then sometimes they kind of throw up like these barriers to people, or there's like a little bit of shame behind it where it's like I can't afford to, you know, buy the organic fresh stuff. I have to buy the conventionally like dollar store canned vegetables, and like at the end of the day they're fine, honestly. So do not feel shame for not being able to buy like the expensive elitist produce. Like it's fine. They're perfectly safe, and it's better than not eating them at all. GMOs are another topic that I kind of like put under this as well, and there is some controversy over these. As far as I'm concerned, and the research that I've done up to this point, on July 26, 2023, I personally am not super concerned about eating GMO food. Again, this is something in the past that I thought was a huge issue and was not safe, and based on the research that we have out now currently, there is no evidence to show that this is an issue for us at this point in time. There's been some benefits from GMOs. You know, we've been able to increase the food supply because there has been an increase in the population on this earth. It's helped keep certain crops be less disease prone, which gives us more food and actually makes it more affordable and more accessible to people. There's this thing called the Golden Rice Project, which is a bit controversial. It's GMO rice, so genetically modified rice. If genetically modified organisms is what GMO stands for, if you're not 100% sure what that acronym is. And basically this is a rice that has like a yellowish color to it, and that's because it's been genetically engineered to contain beta carotene, which our bodies, when we eat beta carotene, like it's what gives carrots and yams and stuff like that orange color. Our bodies convert it into vitamin A, which is good for our eyes, for example, and some other things too. But by having farmers in developing countries use golden rice and plant that, then it's combating some vitamin A deficiencies that are found in those communities. So the controversial issue with this is that some farmers are super enthusiastic about it because it's improved the health of like their families and their community, and others are concerned if they're going to be indebted to larger corporations that are actually producing that stuff. And then, of course, they are skeptical, you know, is there going to be an impact on humans and the environment in the future by using that? So, full transparency, that's kind of the background on golden rice. I've seen that used as an argument on both sides, pro and anti-GMO. So it's kind of like from, again, what I've read and what I've researched thus far, that is what I have found. So generally, it's seen as safe and not a bad thing. It's actually helped the human race, but I understand that people are still kind of skeptical. Right now, we don't have any evidence saying that there's any issue with them. And the other issue that I have to say with like the GMO thing is that it's, again, marketing stuff. So you'll see stuff. What was I making last night? I pulled out lentils and quinoa, and of course on there, they're both organic, like whatever, it's what Aldi had. And on the label, it's like non-GMO. And I'm like, of course it's non-GMO because GMO lentils and GMO quinoa doesn't exist. Those aren't things. If you go to the FDA website, it will give you a list of GMO crops, and it's really just a handful. So sugar beets, canola, soybeans, corn, summer squash, pink pineapples, which is a newer one. I had not seen that one before until I looked recently. Cotton, certain types of potatoes, papayas, apples, and alfalfa. That's it. Those are the GMO crops that are grown here in the United States. Anything else that is labeled, like, again, quinoa and green lentils, they're labeled with, like, non-GMO, and I'm like, yeah, because that doesn't exist. Some people will complain about allergies and intolerances and stuff with food and how GMOs have influenced that, and you know, who knows, maybe that will come out in the future, but as of right now, there's no evidence that it's been disproven time and time again that GMOs cause that stuff. And one of the arguments too are like, oh, GMO wheat in the United States, that's another thing. Did you notice that that was not something that I listed? GMO wheat, as of right now, does not exist in the United States, at least not in mainstream. I know there's been talks about it, but as of right now, again, July 26, 2023, there's no GMO wheat. So just be wary, like, that, you know, non-GMO project label is on a lot of foods, and it doesn't mean diddly squat, to be honest, because some of those foods, most of them don't even exist. And again, genetically modified stuff is not necessarily a bad thing. Coming at this from like the medical field, GMOs are also used in medicine. Insulin, for example, which is absolutely needed for type 1 diabetics and some instances of people who have, like some people who have type 2 I can't talk. Certain cases and severity of type 2 diabetes, people who have that, they absolutely need insulin in order to survive. And insulin, in the way that it is now and has been for the most part widely available, I could go off about the pricing of that, but that was created by genetic engineering as well. So again, you know, I would argue that that's made a huge improvement in our lives as a whole. So GMOs are not all bad. Right now we can't really find a ton of information that they are, and it's been helpful in a lot of ways. So for that reason, I'm not too concerned about consuming stuff that has been genetically modified at this point in time. The second to last thing I will bring up is using exercise only as a means to burn calories. So again, if you are trying to actively lose weight and you are using exercise as a means to decrease your calories to lose weight, it's not usually the best strategy. And this is like a weird paradox, because people who watch what they eat, whatever that means to you, and exercise tend to decrease their weight to a quote-unquote healthy level, which again, that's a very nuanced topic that means very different things to different people and different situations. People tend to keep their weight off if they were actively trying to lose weight, if they watch what they eat and exercise. So they kind of help each other out in that respect. The weird thing is using exercise just as a way to burn calories to lose weight doesn't always work that well, because typically it's easier for you to cut, say, 300 calories out of your daily caloric intake than it is to exercise and quote-unquote burn off 300 calories by working out. You typically, I don't think people realize, you probably don't burn as many calories from working out as you realize, and so it's usually better to kind of tackle that via nutrition. Having said that, there's also the mindset piece of it too, where people kind of get into this cycle where like they use exercise as like a punishment because they overindulged a little bit, or they need to exercise in order to earn certain meals or certain foods or stuff like that. So it can be a little problematic as far as that goes mindset wise too. If people are trying to lose weight, sometimes they're like, oh, I worked out so I can eat more. And it's like, you're probably going to offset the calories that you burned by, eating half a pint of ice cream. Like, no judgment, but I'm just saying because I don't care what you do. I'm not going to judge you either way. Like, you do you. But looking at it purely from like a scientific perspective, if you exercised off like 150 calories and then you eat a half a pint of ice cream, that's probably like 500-ish calories. So then you're back where you started and then some. So using exercise as a means to just burn calories isn't usually the way to go because of all those factors, but it is good for you to do cardio and to do weight training and, whatever other thing you like that gets you active, that you enjoy. It's important because it's good for you for a plethora of reasons. So it's like, do exercise because you enjoy doing certain things, or you enjoy feeling a certain way, or it makes you feel good in your body, it's good for your mental health, or, it's kind of empowering, like after weight training for a while, and like knowing that you can lift, like, I don't know, like we've done a lot of gardening this year. Like, it was nice to just like go pick up a bunch of heavy shit from Home Depot, load it in my Jeep, and then, we were like deadlifting wheelbarrows full of dirt into our raised bed, and it was fine. Like, could do it no problem, wasn't really sore the next day. Like, that's amazing to be, number one, be able-bodied to do that, but then also from working out regularly, like it improves your life and your health. Like, so find reasons why it's important for you to work out because of that, not for like a means to an end because you're trying to, run for 2 hours just to burn off calories. Like, there's so much more. There's so many more benefits and like things to enjoy as far as exercise goes. Don't use it as a means of torture for yourself. That's not fair to you. And the last one I'll touch on is that weight training will make you bulky, which I have been trying very hard to dispel for the better part of a decade for women. or that, you know, only using small dumbbells with like high reps, like stuff like that, or bar and Pilates are workouts that give you long lean muscles. Like, that shit doesn't exist. You're going to build muscle based on how you train to a certain extent. If you're doing anything that is going to cause you to build muscle, you'll build muscle. And long lean muscles don't exist. It's basically how your bones attach, or how your muscles attach to your bones. Some people tend to have their muscles tend to be longer and leaner, and some people don't. And they tend to not look that way when they build muscle, and there isn't really much that you can do about that. Weight training can make you bulky, I'm not gonna lie, it can. However, nutrition has a lot to say about that as well. So if you are eating in a big, you know, calorie surplus and you're trying to be like a power lifter, then yes, it will make you bulky. Most of us are not trying to do that. So again, general population, people that I typically train, doing some weight training and eating your fruits and veggies and some protein, you're not gonna get super, super bulky. And then my other question is, who cares? If you get bulky, like, is that something that you truly don't want, or because society tells you that it's not okay to be bulky? Like, think about that for a minute. It's okay to not always want to shrink yourself into a smaller version of you. Sometimes it's nice to have bigger muscles, because again, then you can fill up a raised bed in your backyard with topsoil with your husband and do some gardening and stuff. And now we have a crap ton of zucchini and tomatoes downstairs, for example. Like, that's kind of cool. So muscle is good. And then on the flip side, I've seen it, I feel like more so marketed towards men. However, women who are like super into weight training and trying to get muscular, there's like this, I mean, it's like it has a kernel of truth in it that like cardio will make you lose your muscle gains, and that's not necessarily true. If you are trying to run long distances, for example, like say you're a marathon runner, you can still build some muscle. It might not be, and you might have to rotate it. Like, I have a couple clients who I train who are longer distance runners, not necessarily marathons, but like they'll run like a half marathon, or they run like 3 to 5 miles pretty regularly, stuff like that. If they are in race season, then we're not trying to like PR deadlifts. Like, it's just not smart. My job for them is to keep them healthy and strong so they can train well and recover well. And so they are strong and reducing their risk of injuries, and they're recovering well on race day. Like, that is my job in that instance. Now, when they are not, and they still have muscle on their frame while they're doing all of that stuff as well, it's made them stronger runners by weight training over time. So cardio will definitely not make you lose your gains, for sure, because they still, both of them that I can think of, I'm like, they got like nice developed quads, like they're good. But also, like, in their, I guess technically their off season, if they're not necessarily like training super hard for a longer distance race, then we're going to focus a little bit more on building some strength and muscle mass and stuff like that. And so their training changes a little bit. I'm changing up some of their exercises, their reps and weights and stuff like that, playing around with that a little bit more. And I think about it, I look at it as the same as like professional athletes or collegiate athletes. Like, if you, or even high school, like, oh God, like, brings back horrible memories. But I was like, we like ran our asses off when I played field hockey for a couple years when I was in high school. And then you do that in the beginning for preseason for like conditioning, and then you don't necessarily do that once like the season gets into full swing. So I kind of look at it sort of the same way. Again, I'm not killing my clients probably as much as I felt like I was in high school, but you can kind of cycle your training based on what season you're in and what you want to focus on athletically at that point. But overall, if you're doing some cardio, most people generally who are adding cardio into their workout routine, if they are doing strength training, it's not going to kill their muscle mass. It's just not. Sure, if you switch over from your focus being weight training only and then you just start doing cardio, then yes, you will notice a change in your muscle mass and your strength. But if you're doing some combination of the two, then you really don't have much to worry about for like the general person, or even my people who do like a lot of running and races and stuff like that. Like they still have a decent amount of muscle on their frame and they're still out there killing it, and they feel good after a race day, which is like the coolest thing to hear, when they're like, I actually, like, my legs felt fine and like I felt normal the next day, which is awesome. So the two go hand in hand. They're both important. One is not superior to the other. They just are beneficial in different ways, and you should do both for sure, on top of things that you enjoy. So, all right, that is all I have for you today. I rambled for 46 minutes, so I think I'm done now. If you have any questions about any of this stuff, or you're looking for clarification or more research, I will include in the show notes where I found some of the like links to where I found this stuff if you do want to check out like where I got it from. Especially, I know people are usually like shocked about like the GMO and organic stuff. Trust me, I was too. So if you want to do some more reading into that, I will post it in the show notes. If you are interested in signing up for my email list, I will also link that in the show notes. And of course, you can follow me on Instagram. I'm usually there the most, but also on Facebook too. I also started Threads, which was interesting, and now I'm kind of like, oh yeah, I keep forgetting about that. Anyway, all the social medias, I'll link all that in the show notes. So until next time, I'll see you guys hopefully sooner than a month from now. But until next time, be safe and be well.